Hi, I'm Goliath. I'm 37 years old. I've been married for 10 years and it ended with a brutal divorce. I love my ex-wife and as recalled, I had tried to prioritize her needs over mine as much as possible. But then, something happened. It made me believe that this marriage is a one-sided affair. There was no way for my dream of a beautiful and financially free future to come true. Hence, I decided it was time to cut these 10 years of marriage clean off. You must be thinking, what happened? Doesn't 10 years of marriage constitute a strong foundation? Was she having another affair? Did I have a change of heart? Was there even a third party involved? The answer is nope. She was a faithful wife. In fact, she meant the whole world to me. You see, after working for 5 years in an electronic manufacturing plant, I decided that in order to achieve our financial freedom, we had to break away from the traditional 9 to 5. I needed to start my own project, essentially to be my own boss. I am committed, hence I decided that I want to do it proper, I want to do it right. It was around the same time that my ex-wife shared with me about this work-study program offered by a local university. It sounded feasible, as we didn't have any kids. I should still be able to sustain the basic needs of my family, just my ex-wife and I. Hence, I enrolled in Singapore Institute of Technology. I became a university student for around 6 months in an attempt to gun for the work-study program. This is where the problem, or should I say my problem, comes in. I had instinctively put my ex-wife as the guarantor for my tuition fee loan without consulting her. And soon came the time for us to go down to our local bank to complete the procedure, but she told me that she was not ready to be my guarantor. Okay, that was how I replied. I know it almost sounded nonchalant because I was generally accepting with a tiny hint of curiosity. In my heart, I know I was doing the right thing by breaking off the 9 to 5. So I went around, approached my brother and completed my enrollment process. And so the race began. I participated and won in an entrepreneurship competition hosted by the university, but failed to get a slot in the work-study program. While all this was going on, at the back of my mind, there was always a conflicting message. I have drowned it out by putting my heart and soul into walking the path less taken. But whenever I caught a break, the message resurfaces. Imagine trying to push a plastic ball into the water in hopes of never seeing it again, but it always resurfaces on the slightest opportunity. Why doesn't she want to be my guarantor? Does she think that I may default my debt and want her to pay for it? Well, I'm not going anywhere, and never in my life have I taken a loan from her, nor asked her to settle my debt. If that isn't it, then what is it? Does it mean that she doesn't trust that I will use the money for the intended purpose of studying? That doesn't make sense either, as there aren't any circumstances that will allow me to use the loan as any form of cash. Or could it be that she is unable to be my guarantor? If that is the case, then why wouldn't she tell me straight? What secret is she trying to keep? Doesn't she trust me enough to share with me the reason? Oh, okay, I know. She wants to draw a clear line when there's the slightest hint that she might need to take on additional financial responsibility. What the hell? Haven't I spent way more throughout the past 10 years of our marriage on her than whatever she may need to? Of course, I'll do my best to ensure that I do not lay any financial burden on her. Did she have so little confidence in me? It doesn't make sense financially for her to disapprove my move to break out of the 9 to 5 either. The only way for us to get the level of financial freedom where we could travel anywhere we want and take care of a schizophrenic mother was to break away from the 9 to 5 and start our own projects. The health of my ex-mother-in-law has been deteriorating due to negligence from her hubby or my ex-father-in-law. It is not easy to take care of my ex-mother-in-law either, as she frequently throws tantrums, much like a kid, demanding things that are not in the best interest towards her health. In other words, she is incapable of self-care. I'll leave that part of the story for next time. Meanwhile, my ex-wife loved to travel. At a stage, none of us really had the time to nurse her mom back into health. I had been silently pondering the question for 3 days. Yes, silently, because this box stinks, and I'm afraid of what happens next if I were to open the box. I did not ask her why, as she was always very guarded in terms of letting me know about the content in her phone. I have no idea why she behaved like that, and I don't believe there's any good reason behind that either. Therefore, I was left wondering why she did not want to be my guarantor. The only reasonable explanation that I came up with was either she was planning to leave me, or she feared that I would run away from her. The more I tried to justify her decision, the deeper I find myself plunging into the well of negativity. Maybe she was unhappy all along. Maybe she had stopped loving me since a long time ago. Has she contemplated on whether to stay or leave me? How long ago could she have come up with the thought of leaving me? But why is she pretending that everything is okay? Wait a minute, is everything actually okay? Or am I too blind to see what's wrong? Okay. I think most likely she is just staying in a marriage because it is still beneficial to her. After all, I'm always the one saying, I love you, and I can't recall when was the last time she said those words to me. Leaving the marriage would also mean that she had to look after her mom all alone. Nobody would be there to help her cope with the stress of the day, to help her out if there are any academic questions. She came out seeking education on her own against her parents' will. Hence, she's generally older than her peers of the same academic level. I was there helping her with her school assignments, reports, and projects. Come to think of it, she's only using me for her own personal gain. Wow, what the fuck? She has been using me for the past 10 years. Our marriage is all about her, and there's no way for us to work hand in hand to build a dream life that we could both enjoy. This has got to end, and it will be the end of our marriage. Besides, me being alone really doesn't need that much financial backing to lead a fulfilled, meaningful life. At the time, it was the only conclusion I could find. I was devastated. My anger grew, and much like a volcano, I erupted. For once in my life, I slammed the door right in her face. I've never done that in my entire life, but not her. She did it before, and at the moment, I was using her language to make her understand my level of despair and frustration. I blame her for destroying the marriage. I was lost. The only thing in my mind were vulgarities against her, to the point where I stepped into the traffic during a red light in a pedestrian crossing. Luckily, nothing happened to me. My awareness of my surroundings became bare minimum. Eventually, as the university syllabus progressed, I realized that I needed to take up modules which I had no interest in. Besides, it didn't feel alright to continue walking down this path. I dropped out. I was never one to cry and has always based my whole life on logical explanations. This time, however, I sat down with my parents and cried like I never did before in my entire life. In my mind, I was a failure with no education, no money, and no love. I'm the youngest child in the family. I recalled when I was a kid, my aunt would once in a while remind me that I was the unplanned child, that my parents had thoughts of giving me away. As I cried to my mom at the dining table, I recalled my mom blamed herself that she brought me to life only for me to suffer. I guess until today my ex-wife still thinks that she did nothing wrong. Therefore, she tried everything other than to apologize and make up. Well, that wasn't entirely true. In the midst of the argument, I did tell her that I needed her to apologize. But she was not sincere at all. She agreed, apologized reluctantly, but with a condition that it would also mean the end of our relationship. On the other hand, I was caught in a cycle of blaming myself and blaming her. In my mind, I was thinking, how can she use the past insignificant disputes, which I don't even remember most of them, and use it against this major life-changing decision? Honestly, in my memory, the only moments that I might have triggered her throughout the past 10 years could be counted using one hand. I convinced myself that I'm better off getting a pet than staying together with her. That's right, she was worse than an animal. She moved out, which marked the beginning of our separation. I was in so much pain or suffering that I had to escape. With my imagination, I took my 5 senses into an imaginary world that I've created. The first mental location I went was to a temple. There was nothing that symbolized God. except a traditional building structure similar to a Chinese temple, with wooden pillars and paper windows. It was my world, and there was no one else except me. Everything was in a faded shade of blue, and I could feel the wind as I watched the leaves slowly falling. I found comfort there, as I could feel nothing except maybe a slight hint of calmness. In the physical world, or what we call in real life, I was actually just slow jogging, listening to some soft music on a park connector. About a year into our argument, I had cried enough and eventually cooled down. or more accurately, my brain changed. I became much more empathetic. Tears welled up in my eyes whenever I witnessed themes of altruism, selflessness, or sacrifice. But at the same time, I was so pissed off at life that I took on a revelation. I believe that there's no way for things to change unless I step out and execute the change myself. I cannot be living in a life of comfort and expect the grand plans to change to accommodate my needs. I think it's time for me to step out and claim my throne. Somehow, that thought always brings me an overwhelming sense of sadness and loss. Perhaps it meant that it's time that I finally let go of my old self. Time to give up on those hedonistic activities. No more games, drama series, or anything related to the pursuit of temporary enjoyment or sensory gratification. Or maybe it meant that I have to become someone ruthless enough to make the tough decisions. I don't know. It always feels so sad that I have to go. Somehow I learned that she was suffering outside. I made the decision to move back in to stay with my parents so that she can have the house to herself. I tried to play nice in an attempt to forget about it. I was miserable, and I remember whenever I go out for a jog, I would go to the multi-story car park right outside my marital house window. I would gaze at the window of my marital home, looking for any signs of activity, wondering if she was coping well. So, after a period of time, it became obvious that I was just torturing myself. Maybe I still miss her, and we haven't done anything as a couple for a long time. That's when I decided to move back into my own house, with or without her permission. She had added a new lock to our house, and that meant I was locked out of my own home. By then, I was convinced that it is this kind of unhealthy act that kept us in a perpetual state of argument. I called the locksmith to undo the padlock on my metal gate. The padlock had a shackle, the curved metal rod that you push into the body to lock it, of approximately 1 centimeter thick. I thought he would simply pick the lock or use a giant plier to cut the lock as per what we see in movies or TVs, but he took out a powered circular saw instead. For a few moments, I was standing in my corridor, watching sparks fly off my metal gate before the lock was finally cut, and I moved back into my own marital home. I guess it's no surprise that she chose to move out again. By then, she had already engaged a lawyer to file for divorce. She began avoiding all conversations and got a personal protection order against me. I remember one night when I was using computer at home, I received a call from Jurong Police Division HQ claiming that I was stalking my ex-wife. I tried asking if they could change the reporting location from Jurong to Woodlands, much closer to where I was staying, but the request was denied. I checked the public transport and made my way over from Woodlands to Jurong. I was supposed to change a bus, but I didn't realize I had missed the last bus by the time that I reached the particular bus stop. I ended up walking to the police station over the next couple of hours. By the time that I reached, it was around 2 to 3 a.m. I was drenched in my own sweat. The police took my statement, understood my plight, and even said that he would help me out by giving my ex-wife some advice. I camped out in the police station that night, shivering in the cold for the next couple of hours, waiting for the first public transport to be available. I didn't agree to the official divorce, despite being the one who initiated the argument. When it was time for me to stand in court in front of a judge to defend myself against the divorce, I represented myself as myself. I was naive to think that it was as simple as I made a mistake. But I was surprised to be met with lies and exaggerations by her lawyer in court, especially after making the oath to tell nothing but the truth. As a result, I lost my home. On the final night before I needed to hand over my keys, I sat down in the corner of my empty house, bawling. I finally let myself go, not just tears running down my eye, but crying out so loud that I'm sure my surrounding neighbors were able to hear. I felt like I have hit rock bottom. I used to find comfort in control, but now it has all been taken away from me. It was pure darkness in my mind. There was no lights, no path for me to walk, and yet I'm still conscious. I'm lost, but I know that if I just keep on moving forward, I'll eventually find something or just anything that I can feel. I question all the fundamentals of life that I've learned. The way my ex-wife behaved was outside of what I was taught to expect of how a human should behave. I re-examined things that I thought were basic facts, things that were ingrained in me from the earliest of my memory. Is the husband and wife supposed to be completely open with each other, or should we keep our problems to ourselves, especially if they are related to intimacy, finance, and confidentiality? Do we need to be aligned with our life purpose, or are we just two individuals who stay together for the benefit of looking after each other? Is it the responsibility of the husband to be the head of the family, to decide on the direction of the family, or should we compromise and decide together on the future of the family? Should I always put my focus on meeting the needs of my wife, or should I tend to her needs only when mine is met? Must I complete university, get a local recognized degree in order to lead a comfortable life? At that point, anything that brings a sense of what it is like to be normal felt good to me. Perhaps one cannot fully appreciate life without having experienced what suffering is. For without pain, there can be no pleasure. Without sadness, there can be no happiness. It was there that I began searching for the meaning of life. I have come to learn to appreciate the little things in life. As I recalled, my mom claimed that she heard the most beautiful song during my birth. She was advised for blood transfusion, and yet she decided against it. She held on to the notion that blood meant life, and it was wrong to take other people's life. Somehow, my birth experience reinforced her belief in Jesus and Jehovah. Yes, she has her own story for that belief. My dad, on the other hand, believed in himself. They didn't dictate what I should believe. Hence, I've always considered myself as a free thinker. In the quest for understanding life, I read quite a handful of self-help books and even came up with my own understanding of spirituality and God. I was never one to complete reading a book, yet I completed reading the book The Untethered Soul, 180 pages, over a cup of coffee. I can't even remember how I came across the book. Right off the bat, it was tackling my question, who am I? I mean, at one point, I was blaming my ex-wife so badly to the point where I was thinking about how to actually murder her. In my mind, she was the root of the problem, and the world is better off without her. Yet, I'm not even a violent person. So, who am I? I always tell people that everyone is unique, because we all have our own set of experiences that mold us to what we are today. So, how could I, within a period of 3 days, change from a well-mannered person to one that curses and swears incessantly? I realized that I started ruminating, talking to myself, trying to justify my ex-wife's behavior because I'm trying so hard to make sense of something that I could not understand. I have unknowingly internalized the event in hope that I can get a better sense of control over external events. Of course, unless I have the ability to change the external world using my mind alone, I'm just mentally beating myself up over and over again. Thinking alone really only affects how we feel, and I was not in control over my faculties. There was a particular morning when I thought of sitting down alone in a hawker to think about how I should handle the situation. I believe that for anything to improve, one must first gain clarity over the distinction between opinions and facts. I was calm, ordered my coffee, flipped open my notebook, and began writing. Pretty soon, it felt like I was turning the valve to a floodgate, much like a dam that was about to break. Every bit of emotion, Anger, frustration, and sadness flooded through me. My heart palpitated. Yet, on the outside, I looked thoughtful and calm. My fitness watch was giving me a warning that my heart rate was too high, as though I was doing some strenuous exercise. Yet, the hard work of such strenuous brain exercise really did not amount to any significant changes to my situation. I found an interesting answer to the question, "Who am I?" from the book. It says we are merely consciousness. Most of the time while you are awake, you are either somewhere in between the scale of fully immersed in the experience or simply talking to yourself. By the way, if you don't talk to yourself, you are not actively thinking. I think my problem, as I mentioned earlier, was that I had lost my anchor and was being pushed around by my rampant thoughts to an uncontrolled life. I have forgotten about the sweet loving memories that we had when we were dating and when we just got married. Maybe I was like a blind man riding a bike, and I consider myself very lucky to still be alive. When I initially got married, I took on the belief that there is nothing I can't solve. I thought if we met a problem, I'll just grow and improve until I have the capacity and resources to overcome it. Yet this time, when I thought there was no solution, I blamed my ex-wife instead. Jeez man, I'm such a sore loser. I think we are so used to thinking that sometimes we let our thoughts go wild. We take action based on thoughts, failing to realize that there are so much more unintended consequences that come together with our desired result. I certainly did not realize that I always have the choice of whether I want to engage with my thoughts or simply acknowledge, appreciate, and understand the purpose of its presence. We all get so used to chasing down distractions, sometimes to the point of overlooking our own needs. We become laser focused on the things that we are chasing after, and then we start looking at all the good things that we already have. This is where I really feel very sad, because we tend to forget what we don't see. We lose all the good things that we enjoy because we do not learn how to appreciate them. And the irony that I find is that a lot of time, what's good for us doesn't necessarily make us feel good organically. I also believe that we are all programmed such that we can only feel one emotion at a time. Try feeling perplexed, curious, and angry at the same time, and you'll find that you really cannot commit to both feelings together. I want to lead a life full of laughter and joy, and I'm sure you want that as well. I'm really thankful towards my ex-wife for putting up with me for the past 10 years. When I think back, I realized the initial argument was quite silly. Maybe it wasn't really worth tearing down everything you own just so that you can get to chase after something you don't have. Even though we might all be evolved to constantly look for new things that can benefit us, it is important to appreciate what we have. I'm sure that the people around you care about you to a certain extent, and we often overlook the things that they do or sacrifice that they have made for us. So, to that I say, let's keep the good coming in. I appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to my podcast. Please subscribe if you have not done so. It really helps to keep the channel running so that I can continue to add more values to your life as well. By the way, there's much more to the book, The Untethered Soul. I find it quite engaging, and I'm sure you want to learn more about how to manifest those emotions into physical health and energy. I've also provided an affiliate link to buy the book in the description. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next episode.